My mother said pregnancy was a blessing, but for us, it was business. From the day I was 8, she was preparing my womb to make someone else rich. By the time I fought back, I realized this wasn't just family pressure. It was organized trafficking in plain sight. There are families where motherhood is celebrated, and then there are families where it's manufactured. I grew up in the second kind. We were poor, barely scraping by in a crumbling suburb on the edge of the city. But what we lacked in money, my mother made up for in ambition. Not for herself, but for our bodies. She started young. When I was only 8, she brought home a pregnancy preparation kit from the clinic where she worked. A rundown fertility center dressed in soft lighting and empty promises. She told me and my older sister Lydia that it was for play, but it never felt like a game. She strapped sandbags to our stomachs, made us practice breathing exercises, and rewarded us when we stopped complaining about the weight. Real women don't whine, she'd say. They deliver. While I squirmed and cried behind the couch cushions, Lydia took to it like religion. She waddled through the house, whispering sweet nothings to a fake belly, cradling those rubber dolls like real infants. She wanted to please Mom. She wanted to matter. By the time Lydia was 16, she was practically begging to be allowed to carry a baby for someone. Anyone. And at 18, she signed her first surrogacy contract. Not for money, we were told. For purpose, for compassion. But the check our mother cashed afterward said otherwise. No one celebrated her graduation. But when she came home from delivering that first baby for a rich tech couple from New York, Mom threw a party like Lydia had won an Olympic gold medal. Streamers, balloons, a cake with the words, "One life brought," many more to come. I remember standing in the corner, watching the glow of adoration on my mother's face. But it wasn't for Lydia. It was for the opportunity. In 3 years, Lydia carried 4 babies, 4 different couples, all wealthy, all desperate, all willing to pay. Her skin grew pale, her eyes sunk deeper with every birth. The glow wore off by pregnancy number 3, by 4. Her hips cracked when she walked, and her hair came out in long, ghostly strands, but still, she smiled. She believed it was her gift. Meanwhile, I did everything I could to walk a different path. I got scholarships, studied law, volunteered at women's shelters, wrote papers about bodily autonomy and legal loopholes in fertility law. My mother never understood. What a waste of a good uterus. She'd mutter behind my back. Her sister gave life to 4 families, and this one hoards her fertility like it's gold. But I knew something my mother didn't. I knew what happened behind closed doors at the clinic. I'd seen women walk in smiling and leave with empty eyes. I'd read the contracts, the fine print, the clauses that let rich couples back out mid-pregnancy, the waivers that stripped surrogates of legal recourse, the hormone regimens that sounded like torture. I stayed away, until one night, when everything changed, Mom invited me to what she called a family dinner. A quiet celebration, just us 3. Lydia was glowing again, belly round, her 5th pregnancy underway. She barely made it through the front door without wincing, but she smiled, because she always smiled. I thought it was going to be another announcement, another blessing. Instead, it was an ambush. "Elena," my mother said softly, pushing a glass of wine away from my hand. "We've already started your hormone treatments." I blinked. What? She reached into her bag and pulled out a syringe. Lydia stood behind me, placing her hands gently on my shoulders. "Just 1 shot to start the process," Mom said. "You don't even have to carry the first one. They just want eggs. You'll barely notice it." I tried to stand. Lydia tightened her grip. "Please, Elena," she whispered. "You could change someone's life. They didn't ask. They plunged the needle into my thigh. The moment the needle pierced my skin, I knew something had been taken from me. Not just the choice, not just the moment, but a part of myself that I hadn't even realized was up for grabs. The liquid was cold, too cold. It stung as it pushed into my muscle, then radiated outward like a frost slowly tightening around my pelvis. My hands flew to my thigh, but it was too late. I stumbled backward, dizzy, my heart pounding so loud I thought the walls might vibrate. "See," my mother said calmly, capping the syringe with practiced ease. "That wasn't so bad." I gasped. "What the hell did you just inject me with?" She raised an eyebrow. "It's a starter hormone. Follicle-stimulating hormone, perfectly safe. It'll get your ovaries prepped for retrieval. Just a little boost." Lydia stepped in front of me, smiling that same tired, reverent smile I'd seen after each of her births. "I already told the clinic you were open to donation," she said gently, as if it were something we'd mutually agreed on. "They have a couple waiting. They're doctors. Elena. They're ready to pay top dollar. I spun toward the door, my legs trembling, but something in my lower abdomen was already throbbing. Like the hormones were lighting fires under my skin, coaxing something out of me I hadn't given permission for. What? What couple? I croaked. Mom was already on the phone. Yes, she said with chilling composure. The protocol has begun. Retrieval is scheduled in 2 weeks. I froze. That word again, retrieval, like I was a warehouse, a shelf, a storage unit. I looked at Lydia. Not my sister, not the girl who used to braid my hair or hold my hand when the power went out, but a stranger in a maternity tunic, smiling like she'd just baptized me into something holy. You did this, I whispered. You let her do this to you, and now you're letting her do it to me. She saved my life, Lydia said. Before this, we had nothing. Now I'm giving something to the world. You're just too selfish to see it. I didn't remember collapsing, but I remember the pain. My ovaries pulsed like they were being twisted inside out. My chest heaved, my vision blurred. I remember someone lifting me, voices calling out, and the flashing red numbers on an ambulance monitor. That's how I ended up in the ICU. When I woke, I was strapped to wires and machines. My abdomen was swollen. The pain was sharp, rhythmic, alive. Ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, severe. They'd had to drain fluid from my abdomen and stabilize my hormone levels. The nurse told me I was lucky. If they'd waited any longer, my reproductive organs might have ruptured. But that wasn't the part that destroyed me. It was when I saw her, my mother, standing at the foot of the hospital bed like a disappointed investor staring at a failed project. We brought you in, she said, because your uterus is still viable. Not because I was her daughter, not because I nearly died, but because my product, was still usable. I pressed the red emergency button with shaking hands. A nurse arrived within seconds. She took one look at my pale face and my mother's blank expression, and, without a word, asked her to leave the room. Once the door clicked shut, I broke. I told the nurse everything about the syringe, the dinner, the contracts, the pressure, the fact that my sister had been carrying for strangers since she was barely legal, that my mother worked at a fertility clinic that didn't just take in women in need. It recruited them, groomed them, prepped them, paid them just enough to call it compensation, but not enough to call it choice. The nurse didn't speak for a while. Then she held my hand and said, very quietly, "You're not the first." She stepped out and returned 20 minutes later, this time with a man in a brown leather jacket and a badge clipped to his belt. He pulled up a chair and introduced himself as Detective Marcus Hill from the Reproductive Crimes Task Force. "We've been investigating Blessed Beginnings for a while now," he said softly. "But it's hard to prove anything when everyone signs the paperwork. The consent forms are airtight. The donors always agree. But I didn't. I said, I never signed anything." He opened a file folder and showed me a piece of paper. A medical consent form with my name, my birth date, my forged signature. "We pulled this from the clinic's system after the nurse flagged your admission," he said. "This was filed 2 weeks ago. And electronically backdated, with your mother listed as your medical proxy." "My medical what?" I asked, heart racing. "Your medical power of attorney. It gives her authority to make decisions on your behalf. But I never signed that." He nodded grimly. "That's what we need to prove." I stared down at the page, at the signature that looked like mine if you tilted your head, if you didn't know how my loops curl or how I dot my I's. She'd practiced it, rehearsed it, forged not just my name, but my life. Through the window, I saw her outside the room again, arguing with the nurse, shouting into her phone. Her lawyer would be here soon. I knew it. They were building a case. The narrative would be simple. I was unstable, confused, hysterical from hormonal imbalance. A tragic story of a daughter who broke down during her fertility journey. They'd already weaponized the language of care. I had to find a way to make them hear the truth before the system swallowed me whole. The hospital room, with its beeping monitors and sterile light, felt more like a stage than a place of healing. And I was trapped in the middle of a performance someone else had written for me. The nurse returned. A new one, young, hesitant, but kind, carrying a small tray of food I couldn't stomach. She lowered her voice as she set it down. "Your mother, she's asked for a psychiatric consult," she said carefully. "Claims you're unstable. We haven't scheduled anything. Yet." I stared at her, numb. "Yet." She gave me a look. The kind that says, "I believe you, but I'm just a nurse, and this is bigger than me." Then she leaned closer, adjusting my pillow to mask her whisper. Don't sign anything. Don't let them sedate you. And when you can, check your phone's location settings. Someone's been tracking you. The next hour passed in a daze. The door opened again, this time revealing a woman in an expensive suit and the kind of practiced smile I'd come to associate with courtrooms and custody battles. Hi, Elena. I'm Dr. Margaret Whitfield. Your mother asked me to stop by, just to chat. I blinked. I knew that name. She'd been at our house before, not as a doctor, but as a guest. My mother's book club, wine, gossip, and just enough professional power to make her dangerous. Before I could speak, Detective Hill returned. She's not doing an evaluation without her attorney, he said firmly, arms crossed. Dr. Whitfield smiled sweetly. That's unusual, but of course. If she's feeling combative, I'll note that as well. I met Detective Hill's eyes. He gave the smallest nod, then stepped aside. She pulled out a tablet. Let's talk about your relationship with motherhood. I wanted to scream, but I knew better, so I answered. Slowly, carefully, trying to dodge the traps. I said I never wanted children. That I chose law over family, that I believed in autonomy. Each time, she nodded, made a note, then twisted my words into pathology, avoidant of femininity, possibly projecting past trauma onto reproductive topics, history of hostility toward maternal figures. When I told her my mother injected me without consent, she tilted her head sympathetically. Elena, are you often suspicious of those who love you? No, I snapped. I'm suspicious of people who forge documents and force hormone injections into my body. She made another note. I saw it in her eyes. She wasn't listening. She was documenting. Then she pulled out her trump card. Your mother found these in your apartment, she said, swiping to a photo on her tablet. 3 baby dolls, hidden behind my winter coats in the hallway closet. They weren't mine. Elena, it's not uncommon for women grieving fertility to regress emotionally. Playing with dolls, imagining babies, writing letters. What letters? She showed me a second image, a torn page from what looked like my handwriting. Baby names, doodles, hearts. I had no memory of writing it, because I didn't. They're staged, I said. She planted those. Denial is part of the process. Dr. Whitfield murmured. She set down the tablet and folded her hands in her lap. I'm recommending a 72-hour psychiatric hold, she said quietly, just for observation. You're clearly under distress. And I think, with rest, we can help you realign with your true maternal instincts. You can't do that. You're not in a position to refuse. I pressed the nurse call button again. No one came this time. As she left, she turned and added, Your mother has already begun the paperwork for medical conservatorship. It's all very standard in cases like this. Standard. Like this was routine. Like stripping a woman of legal control over her own body was no more than filing insurance claims and clicking yes on a form. An hour later, 2 orderlies arrived. Big men, soft-spoken, gentle but firm. We're transferring you to the psychiatric observation ward, one said, just for safety. I didn't resist. I couldn't afford to. I needed to be lucid, alert, sane. If only in appearance. But when I saw my mother waiting in the hallway with a suitcase and a framed photo of Lydia's latest baby in her hand, I felt something crack deep inside me. She wasn't crying. She wasn't worried. She looked victorious, like a general watching her enemy surrender. And I realized this was the plan all along. The psychiatric ward smelled like antiseptic and steam-pressed linens. Not quite a hospital, not quite a prison, but with just enough of each to keep you disoriented. I was given paper scrubs and a room the size of a supply closet. White walls, a single bed with visible restraint straps, a small window too high to see out of, and a security camera in the top corner, blinking slowly like a mechanical eye waiting for me to snap. The nurse doing intake didn't meet my gaze when she asked the questions. History of self-harm. Oh, suicidal ideation. Violence against family members. I paused. Only if injecting your daughter without consent counts. She typed something without replying. Any delusions, paranoia, hallucinations. I gave her the flattest look I could muster. Only about this place being trustworthy. She clicked her pen. Dr. Whitfield has ordered restricted visitation for the first 24 hours. Family only. No phone calls. That's illegal. She flinched slightly. I'll check with the attending physician. But of course, the attending physician was never available. Nor the patient advocate, nor the hospital administrator. Everyone was in a meeting, off shift, or simply unreachable. And I realized this was the true design. Not straitjackets or padded rooms, but endless paperwork and policy that turned silence into compliance. Later that afternoon, my mother arrived, smiling like she'd come to visit me at summer camp. She unpacked the suitcase methodically, maternity dresses in my size, a journal titled My Fertility Journey, a bottle of prenatal vitamins, and printed photos of Lydia's babies labeled your nephews and your godson. I thought these might help, she said sweetly. Just something to ground you in reality. She pulled out a pale blue dress, clearly tailored for a second trimester bump, and hung it in the small closet like it belonged there. The retrieval is scheduled for next week. Dr. Martinez said your follicles responded better than expected. I stared at her. I'm not consenting to anything. She folded a baby onesie. Of course not. Sweetie. Not while you're still confused. That's when she said it. Like it was nothing. Like it was the weather. I've petitioned for temporary medical conservatorship. Just until you're thinking clearly again. She handed me a folder thick with documents, psychiatric evaluations, forged legal signatures, letters of concern from colleagues, all supporting the claim that I was in psychological distress due to unresolved fertility grief. My signature was on half of them, but they weren't mine. The loops were wrong, the slant too stiff, but close enough that a judge might believe it. She smiled and patted my arm. Several of your coworkers wrote letters. They're worried about you. All those pro bono cases for pregnant women, they think you were working through something personal. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. This wasn't just about eggs anymore. She was turning my entire life, my work, my advocacy, my identity, into a case study for why I needed to be controlled. I brought some things for the room, she added, to make it feel more nurturing. She hung up a mobile of tiny elephants over the bed, placed an ultrasound photo in a frame labeled Baby Gonzalez, due June 18. She was building a nursery around me. Right here, in a psych ward. When she left, I curled into the stiff bed and stared at the ceiling, trying not to vomit. I didn't sleep, not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't. The hallway never went quiet. Someone always crying, someone else always whispering for their mother. Around midnight, an older nurse with tired eyes slipped into my room. I don't have long, she whispered, but I knew the nurse who flagged your case. She was fired. Retaliation. Probably. She pressed a piece of paper into my palm. A phone number. Safe line. Don't call from here. But when you're out, call it. There are more of us than you think. Then she left. As silently as she came. I tore the paper into tiny pieces and flushed them, memorizing the number as it dissolved. I already knew if they found it. They'd call it a symptom. Proof of paranoia, of delusions. Evidence that I was sick. The next morning brought group therapy. 6 women in a circle, talking about their struggles with femininity. When my turn came, the therapist smiled gently. Elena's working through some difficult fertility issues, he said to the group. But she's made wonderful progress, accepting the nurturing side of herself. I hadn't said a single word. Still, they all looked at me with soft eyes and shallow pity. One girl, barely out of high school, leaned toward me. I used to think I didn't want kids either, she whispered, but that was just fear. Therapy helped me realize I was just scared of being a bad mom. I wanted to scream, to pound the walls and tell them that not wanting children is not a mental illness, that choosing something else is not dysfunction. It's autonomy. But I just nodded and let them draw their own conclusions. Because I finally understood this wasn't a place for healing, it was a place for molding. And if I wanted to survive it, I'd have to become exactly what they wanted to see. The morning I decided to play the part, I rose before the nurse's flashlight made it sweep. I smoothed my paper scrubs, pulled the maternity dress over my thin frame, and stood in front of the mirror, practicing the look Lydia had mastered years ago. Soft smile, head tilted slightly, hands gently resting on the belly that wasn't there. During group therapy, I raised my hand for the first time. I think I understand now, I said, letting my voice tremble just the right amount. All these years, I've been fighting what I really wanted. The therapist's eyes sparkled. Tell us more. Elena. I told them I'd had a dream. A baby in my arms, a nursery, a peace I'd never known. I said I used my career to avoid my grief, that I envied my sister, that I was finally ready to heal. By the time Dr. Whitfield arrived for my individual session, the groundwork had been laid. I owe you an apology. I began, wringing my hands. You were right. I was projecting my fear of inadequacy onto motherhood. She practically glowed. This is extraordinary progress. Elena, truly, I think I'm ready to start talking about donation, I whispered. Not now, but soon. Can you tell me more about the couple? She reached for her folder like a priest, retrieving scripture. He's a pediatrician. She's a speech therapist. They've been trying for 5 years. Your mother showed them your baby pictures. I smiled through the nausea building in my gut. They sound wonderful. She scribbled furiously. I'll recommend expedited discharge. You're ready to take the next steps. That afternoon, my mother came for visiting hours. I rubbed my belly and asked about the vitamin schedule. She burst into tears of joy. You're back, she whispered. You're really back. No. Mom, I said softly. I'm finally forward. That evening, I was cleared for release. Dr. Whitfield insisted I continue outpatient therapy, of course, but the hold was lifted. I was free. Almost. The next day at 900 a.m., my mother picked me up with a bouquet and a gift bag, prenatal vitamins. She beamed. Just to prep your body. I accepted them with a smile. Mom, before the clinic, can I stop by my apartment? I want to look nice. I want this to be perfect. She hesitated. It's just that. Please, I said, mimicking Lydia's tone exactly. You were right about everything. I just want to honor this journey. She melted. Of course. Back at my apartment, I locked myself in the bathroom. My fingers flew over the keypad. I called the colleague I'd emailed from the psych ward, a woman who specialized in conservatorship disputes. The hearing is at 2 a.m. today, she whispered back. But your mother already filed for emergency proxy authorization. She's taking you to the clinic at the exact same time. I know, that's why I'm calling you now. I gave her everything. Passwords, files, the forged documents from my medical portal, screenshots of altered signatures. She went quiet. This is enough to blow it up, she finally said. But only if you're there in court to testify. I will be. When I emerged, my mother was folding my law books into a storage box and replacing them with parenting guides. I didn't flinch. You've really matured, she said, brushing my hair. This time, we'll do everything right. At 1:30, we arrived at Blessed Beginnings. The waiting room was bright, full of smiling couples and young women who looked like me. Too quiet, too polite, too numb. The nurse at the desk smiled. Welcome back, Patricia. And this must be Elena. She's eager to help, my mother said. I'd like to use the restroom, I said. I slipped out the side exit. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The rideshare had arrived. The courthouse was 10 minutes away. I arrived at 2:25. When I burst through the double doors, the judge was already speaking. My mother turned in her chair like a woman watching a ghost walk in. Elena, she said, stunned. You were supposed to be? At the clinic. I finished. Yeah, I figured I'd choose court instead. My colleague rose. Your Honor, my client has arrived. We respectfully request the petition for conservatorship be dismissed on grounds of fraud, coercion, and medical abuse. The courtroom held its breath. I took the stand. I told them about the injections, the forged documents, the fake dolls, and planted letters. I played the role of my life, not the broken woman they expected, but the advocate I'd always been. For the first time, I wasn't defending someone else. I was defending me. When it was her turn, my mother wept. I just wanted her to experience the joy of motherhood. I wanted grandchildren. You already have 5, I said, pointing to Lydia in the back, holding her swollen belly and her toddlers like shields. She chose this life, my mother hissed. Or maybe, I said, she was trained to believe she had no other value. The judge banged the gavel. Petition denied. Patricia Gonzalez is hereby issued a restraining order. No contact with Elena Gonzalez in any form. My mother wailed. Lydia turned away, but I stood, still, free. That evening, I returned to my apartment. Everything was as I left it. Except I wasn't the same. I opened my phone and found dozens of messages. From colleagues, clients, even old friends, and one from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, it's Emma, Lydia's daughter. Grandma says I'll make a great mommy one day. But I don't want that. Can I talk to you? I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, Yes, sweetheart. You can talk to me anytime. You don't have to be like them. You get to choose. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is teach a girl that her body is her own, even if it takes a war to prove it.